Dave Scott, Community of Healing. I'm with Teresa. And Teresa, this is an amazing book. And you and I off air were just talking about it. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. And I think what we want to do is tell the audience a little bit about the book and why you wrote it. Your backstory is incredible.
This book was written as my healing journey of healing 4 generations of my family, healing from child abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, every kind of abuse you can possibly think of. And I have survived all of those. I've also survived 2 near-death experiences. One was my choice, an attempted suicide behind the wheel of my father's car that we were discussing. And that was the first time that I actually heard the words, "You're not finished here yet," when the steering wheel was pulled out of my hands and I found myself back on the road. So at that time I was a young teenager, didn't know what those words meant, but continued on with my life, got married, had a long-term marriage that didn't end in the best of situations, but everything happens for a reason. And a few years later, about 2005, I went to college for the first time in my life, and I was going to improve myself. I was going to work on myself and find out who I was, because I had all this stuff in my background, but I didn't understand what it was, what it meant, why it even happened. It just was. And after I went to college, wasn't even finished college, but I ended up landing a great human resource job in London. And at that time I had moved there with my soon-to-be husband, and everything was going well. Life, for the first time in my life, was fabulous.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
What inspired you to go to college?
It was something that was always denied me. When I was young, those things didn't exist. It was you go out and work. I'm from hardworking tobacco farmers, and that's all you did.
Yeah.
You worked, and you worked. Education wasn't that important, and I didn't have the opportunity. So during my marriage, I also was trying my best to support my husband and my children and, do that role. So I was always the last on the list.
Yeah.
Way down somewhere, the bottom, kicking around in the dirt. But when I went out on my own for the first time in my life, that became a priority. It was
Must have been uplifting.
It was like the doors opened up, and I couldn't believe the opportunities that I finally had to figure out who I was. But it didn't quite work out that way.
Oh, that's what you were telling me.
Yeah. After I graduated college, like I say, I got this great job, got married. 8 months later, and it was actually February 22nd, 2007, going home from work in a terrible ice and snowstorm that day. I was faced with one of the most incredible opportunities I've ever had in my life. And it was the opportunity of facing death.
Wow.
Not by my choice.
No.
Unfortunately, the person that was driving towards me that day couldn't control their vehicle, and I had stopped my truck on the road, and I just sat and waited and watched this person losing control. So I watched the entire scenario act out, and it was horrific. I was panicking. Terror was just, crawling up from my toes, and I actually screamed out in the inside of my truck. I had what I call the death grip on the steering wheel, foot on the brake, and I just waited for this person to hit me. And I don't like going into too much detail like that, because people with post-traumatic stress, which I
Definitely.
have, it kind of does trigger those people. And I always am conscious of that because I've had it happen to me. So,
but you heard that voice again, did you?
I did. Just seconds before the impact of the truck, it was another truck that hit me, I heard again, "You're not finished here yet." But I had no clue, absolutely no clue. I was so, like we were talking, there is a calm that just kind of
envelops you,
exists around you, and you're in almost like I consider it being wrapped in angel wings. And that's why I have angel wings represented on my book, because I've been saved, and I think I have part of the answer as to why.
So you've come through this traumatic experience. You're injured quite badly. You're telling me off camera, and you're rebuilding your life, and you start to write.
I was trying to figure out what my why was, and I went back to my 2 main passions that I've always had since I was a young little girl, and it was to help people and to write. Those were my life ambitions. And I now had the opportunity to do it. So I decided that I took an authorship course, and it was a 4-month course, and I learned how to write properly, how to engage the reader, how to hypnotically draw the reader into what you're writing. But it was also more therapeutic for me than anything I could ever have done in my life. That book, when I was finished it, there was an absolute elephant that got off my shoulders. I was free from everything that had ever happened to me. It didn't own me anymore. It's like now, like I'm talking about someone else.
It's amazing, and being a writer myself, and having those moments, they are truly unique, because it does leave you, and you're letting go of something that you didn't understand or you couldn't control. But then you, when it's all said and done, and you and I had this conversation, you can look back and the pieces all fit together, don't they?
They do. And I look at it that accident obviously happened for a reason. It was a wake-up call for me, and it gave me the opportunity to reevaluate everything. And I'm using those tools that I have and that I experienced all my life to turn it around and help other people.
Your life coaching.
Yes, absolutely. And we were discussing, I know you were discussing with Jennifer about being left-sided in the brain. Since I have been hit on the left side of my head, where part of the damage was, I've turned completely right-sided brain. And it's the more creative side and the more, that aspect. So I've actually taken everything that I've written in here, done 2 life coaching certifications, and I'm actually just about to complete a neurolinguistic programming certification. So I'm taking everything that I've known, every experience I've had, and letting other people know that have experienced the same things that they're not alone. Because the loneliness and isolation that goes along with those events is just, it can just choke the life completely out of you.
Well, you talk about that, and you can see how depression, anxiety, and all this spills over from that. And I think that's important that people recognize when you can use a life coach and maybe help you with those. That is the critical component. And you finished the book, and it's an award winner, obviously.
It is, yes.
You must be very proud of it, that accomplishment. Look how far you've come.
It was quite a shock. It was announced September 1st last year that they announced the International Readers' Favorites. They announced the award winners, and I received honorable mention in the grief and hardship categories. And there's been some incredible people that have won from these awards, like Henry Winkler and Jim Carrey. They've all contributed books to this organization and won awards for their work.
And taking that stand and talking about your life in the past, you must get emails, you must talk to people now, then you've probably created some kind of bond and helped them understand their own lives, eh?
Absolutely, and that's the point that I have just recently received an email from a young lady from the hometown that I'm from. And there is some situations in this book that involve sexual abuse from a family doctor.
Wow.
And this girl came out through one of her messages, and she said to me, I was too, by the same man.
Wow.
And she said, I've never voiced it before until I read your book.
And I know that's just the first step, but what a relief for her too.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a wake up for me too, because in my existence, I thought, I must be the only one.
Yeah.
Like I just assumed I was the only one, and that's so not a good way to look at it.
No.
But to hear someone else voice the same thing about the same person. Yeah. And it validated my feelings, and I'm sure it gave her comfort to know she wasn't alone as well. And now it's given her power to voice her situation.
There it is, power, right?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
empowering people.
Exactly.
And that's what I like to hear. I want to just switch course a little bit here, and let's talk a little bit how you got involved with Mary and the community of healing and Sunflower Stables, because that's another story, isn't it?
Absolutely.
How did you and Mary meet?
I actually met Mary at an Oxford Women in Networking lunch. Actually, it was the same one that Jennifer met her at a year ago. And Mary was interested in my book, but she wasn't sure she was going to grab it that day, but she was kind of intrigued. And then all of a sudden she took a copy of it. And then she invited me down to Sunflower Stables to experience what her horses do and what equine therapy can do for someone. And I must admit, it was a powerful experience. And those horses connect with whatever has gone on
Yeah.
in here. And when you ground yourself and you connect with those animals, it is so healing, so incredible. And Mary wasn't aware that I had such spinal issues. But one of the horses, as she and I were talking, started, getting a little carried away in the barn and was getting excited. And she said, he represents back pain.
Wow.
So
There you
it's
go,
like,
right?
oh my
All
goodness.
this, all this comes together.
Yeah.
And we're going to do another quick interview in a few minutes, and we're going to bring in another person that you've been working with at the farms. Isn't that right?
Yes, actually, a friend of mine from many years ago, we've reconnected through reading my books. And she is also a person who has gone through severe car accidents and has experienced brain trauma as well. And Susan was intrigued by what I had found at the farm. And I thought, you know what, let's see if this will help. So we took her down there, and I watched, as a facilitator with Mary, I watched Susan go through the process of experiencing what the horses tell you.
Yeah.
And it was, from going through it myself, but then standing back
And observing.
and observing and the communication, and it's nonverbal,
Yeah.
but it's
there.
powerful, very powerful. So Susan has come a long way, and I'd like for you to talk
Perfect.
with her.
We're going to have a little chat. But first, before we go, how can people get your books? Are you on the website? Give out the information.
Actually, this book is on Amazon.
Perfect.
And so it's available, but if anyone would like a signed copy, they're more than welcome to email me at teresa@teresasyms.com. That's my email address. My website is very simple, teresasyms.com. And
Perfect.
I would love to sign copies for anyone, because I've received so many comments that people find themselves in that book.
Yeah, there's
And
probably
they
a little bit of everybody.
recognize what has happened, and it awakens them to maybe something that was buried deep. And I'm all about removing limiting beliefs and old programs, and that's what I do in my coaching, is to really ask those hard questions. Believe it or not, I can do those. But it's to get the person to think and change and stop the old programs and just move on.
Yeah. Find the new you.
Yeah, choreograph
Yeah.
your own life.
Community healing.
That's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's a community of healing.
Absolutely.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate
Thank
your time,
you.
and we're going to segue into our next little interview.
Perfect. Thank you.